Just before the war, Israel was very divided politically over the issue of the Supreme Court, and there were protests in the streets. Did that weaken us? Did Hamas feel, oh, now's a good time to attack? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean we don't deserve? It means we didn't protect ourselves. You took your helmets off.
Yeah.
Now you're complaining you got shot in the head? So taking off a helmet is not a sin. You're not being punished for taking off your helmet, but you're suffering for it. But you take your helmet off for it.
Rabbi, I want to ask you on this very topic about our relationship with the land of Israel as a Jewish people. I remember sometimes hearing from rabbis, even in yeshiva, who would say, certainly at times that seemed a bit perilous, that the Jewish people's relationship with the land of Israel, they didn't so much frame it as an inheritance, it was more conditional. That, I remember hearing one rabbi saying, people think that the Jews have the right to the land of Israel, and what happens there, God decides. He says it's the other way around. God owns the land of Israel as he does the whole earth, and what happens there is determined by the Jewish people's actions, and they would make it much more conditional. I wondered what your thoughts were on that, because I think that's actually quite common. We see it in pockets of religious Jewish life.
There's a difference between a promise and a covenant. A promise could be conditional. If you will behave and if you will follow my commandments, then you will live in peace on the land. Yeah, it's conditional. If a covenant is conditional, then it's not worth the paper it's written on or the parchment. So,
go on, why?
Because a covenant means unconditional. That's the very definition of a covenant. It's like you make a covenant because you know that there will be times that you will not like each other. And you will want to separate and go your separate ways. Covenant means, no, we will never do that. Like a marriage, for better or for worse. Which we don't say, by the way. But
yeah, I noticed.
That's the point. That's the point of a covenant. So some people said, well, you used to be the people of the covenant, but God took it from you and gave it to us. I said, in that case, you can keep it. It's worthless. Now he's going to take it from you and give it to somebody else? What's the point? No, a covenant is permanent. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Now, deserving to live in peace on the land. Oh, yeah, that's true. If you're going to live in a holy land, you got to live a little holy. Otherwise, there won't be peace. But it'll still be your land. The other thing is, just talking about Jewish law, should you die out of devotion to the land, to maintain the land, should you die for that cause? And the answer is no. You don't die for the land. So, if it were possible to actually achieve peace by sharing the land, then we would. It's a lot better than dying. The problem is, like we were saying before, you can't share the land when they're convinced that it all belongs to them by inheritance. So sharing
to be
makes
clear,
it worse.
you don't mean dying to maintain Jewish security, which is certainly what's happening now in Gaza. I think it's important to clarify that.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. The point of going to war and risking your lives is to protect the people.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not patriotism.
Yeah.
It's love of fellow Jew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Israel doing everything they're supposed to be doing? The ceasefire was a mistake. And I think they know it because when it first began, the prime minister said, this time there will be no ceasefire until all of Hamas is gone. And then all of a sudden, there's a ceasefire. Now I hear there's some talk about a second ceasefire, which is suicidal. But it seems like the pressure is very strong, and you got to be made out of steel to be able to resist that kind of pressure. But
Mm.
if you can't, step down and let somebody else do it.
Mm.
But God forbid there should be another ceasefire.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to be really strong. Just picking up on this point about our relationship with the land and it being conditional. I know that you're very, very cautious uh, to ever make any kind of victim blaming, which signs we might see in religious circles where they'll say it's because we're not holy enough, it's because we're not this or whatever. Could you just make just to talk about that for a minute? Because you often say, given the fact that it's been so long since we heard from God, we've had so much time in exile, we shouldn't ever beat ourselves up about where we're at. Like we've done amazingly as a people. How do you balance that with at the same time saying there are certain realities about what we need to do, but without ever kind of beating ourselves up about bad things that have happened in recent times?
We get very upset when the other nations talk about equal blame. We get very upset, but then we do it to ourselves, worse than they do. When we get to blaming ourselves, we're very good at it,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a terrible thing.
Secular and religious.
Excuse me, huh?
Secular and religious. Secular will say, "Oh, it's because we had that wrong policy and we need to do."
Okay. Now, there's a difference between saying we don't deserve versus saying we're not ready.
Mm.
We're definitely not ready. I mean, you don't need any more evidence to that fact. But that we don't deserve, it's ridiculous. For example, just before the war, Israel was very divided politically over the issue of the Supreme Court, and there were protests in the streets. Did that weaken us? Did Hamas feel, oh, now's a good time to attack? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean we don't deserve? It means we didn't protect ourselves. You took your helmets off.
Yeah.
Now you're complaining you got shot in the head? So taking off a helmet is not a sin. You're not being punished for taking off your helmet, but you're suffering for it.
Yeah.
What you take your helmet off for?
Yeah. It's like I spoke to a teacher the other day that was saying they don't like using the word punishment. They talk about consequences.
So the ceasefire was a mistake. Was it a sin? Hardly. But it was poor strategically, and it set back the momentum. More soldiers have died because of it. Even going in on foot, was that a good decision? Wasn't a sin. Bad choice. Every soldier in Gaza today is terrified of entering a building, of entering a tunnel, of entering because they're all booby trapped and they're all dying for it. And I've heard some of the soldiers saying, why do we have to enter the building when you can bomb it? Take the building out. because of public opinion.
Yes, and
Which
also I know some soldiers would say, I desperately want to protect civilians on the other side.
at the cost of their own lives. That's virtue, but it's wrong virtue. It's not sensible. The army should not allow it. The army should be protecting its own soldiers.
Amen.
So we've made some big mistakes, but we don't deserve to live. What a crazy statement is that? Not only do we deserve to live, we deserve to win miraculously, like in the 6 Day War, where so few soldiers died. Miraculously. And friendly fire? What in the world is that? Soldiers mistakenly killing hostages? What are we out of control there? What's going on there? Bungling this thing? So, was it a sin that those soldiers shot the 3 hostages? It was not a sin, but something is wrong in their. And again, that comes from going in on foot. They
Surely the
know that.
hostages would have been even more likely to die had we not gone in on foot.
I don't know. Why did they take the hostages? To kill them?
No, as bargaining power.
So they're going to keep them alive as long as they can.
Mm.
They're more interested in keeping them alive than we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. The point is, going in on foot is what makes it so dangerous. And now Hamas has learned they can speak a little Hebrew and lure you into a building. So now, if the hostages do speak Hebrew, we can't tell them apart from the. They even wave white flags to lure you into a booby trap building. There's no reason to go into any building ever. First, knock it down. Entering tunnels? Why do you have to enter the tunnel? Fill it with water or fill it with gas. Why do you have to? Why are you risking your life when you don't have to? Because of public opinion, which we'll never get anyway.
Of course. Of course. It's clearly the public opinion is so clearly skewed against Israel and not interested in the reality on the ground. It always was.
We always win the wars, but we always lose the PR battle. Consistently.
I saw a great line from Golda Meir. She said, I prefer condemnation to condolences.
Yeah. Or others said, first do what you need to do and then apologize. But first do it.
Yeah.
Don't apologize in advance.
Yeah. 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 So we need to regain our confidence, really, on all sides.
Exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
2,000 years. Yeah. 2,000 years of abuse, our confidence is pretty shaken.
Mm.
Even with the best army in the region.
Yeah. 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 And you're saying that the theme of this discussion is we regain our confidence from having confidence that we are the inheritors of the land.
Yeah. Because the issue is who,
yeah.
Not what is what.
Yeah.
It's not who has bigger tanks or who has bigger bombs. It's who's who. Are they who they claim to be, or are we who we claim to be?